let's be honest, something strange is happening in relationships today. More men than ever are choosing to stay single, not because they don't want love, not because they've given up, but because they are tired of being misunderstood, tired of being judged, tired of playing a game where rules keep changing. Now, before anyone gets defensive, this isn't about blaming women in a toxic way. It's about accountability. It's about facing uncomfortable truths that most people are too afraid to say out loud. We live in a time where connection has never been easier, yet people have never felt more disconnected. Men are retreating, not out of weakness, but out of self-preservation. They are asking, why invest in something that doesn't value what I bring to the table? And women, yes, many amazing, powerful, ambitious women, sometimes forget that strength without empathy creates distance, that independence doesn't mean you stop nurturing, that equality doesn't mean emotional disconnection. So today, we're going to talk about why so many men are checking out, not to point fingers, but to open eyes, because if we don't start understanding each other again, we're not just losing relationships, we're losing connection, we're losing the very thing that makes us human. Modern relationships are collapsing because emotional accountability is disappearing. Somewhere along the way, people stopped taking ownership of how they show up for others. Everyone talks about what they want in a partner: loyalty, love, honesty, but few stop to ask, am I giving that same energy back? Emotional accountability isn't about being perfect, it's about being aware. It means asking yourself hard questions like, did I handle that conversation with respect? Or did my reaction make this better or worse? Yet most people are too focused on defending themselves instead of understanding the other person. We've become experts at shifting blame instead of reflecting. In modern relationships, it's easy to point fingers when things fall apart. We say, he didn't communicate, or she was too emotional, without ever examining our own role in the breakdown. Emotional accountability means recognizing that relationships are mirrors. They show you who you are, not who you pretend to be. When you avoid responsibility, you avoid growth. The truth is, it's not love that's disappearing, it's maturity. People want the rewards of love, companionship, validation, comfort, without the responsibility of emotional labor. They want connection without vulnerability, partnership without patience, and that's why so many relationships crumble before they even have a chance to deepen. We now live in a culture that rewards instant gratification. Everything from ordering food to finding a date happens with a swipe or a click. So when a relationship demands effort, people panic. They assume discomfort means incompatibility instead of understanding that real intimacy takes work. Emotional accountability requires patience, reflection, and humility, qualities that can't be fast-tracked, but modern society glorifies the quick fix. Instead of talking things through, people ghost. Instead of apologizing, they justify. Instead of growing, they move on to the next person, hoping it'll somehow be easier. The lack of accountability shows up in subtle ways too. It's when someone avoids difficult conversations because they don't want drama. It's when people weaponize silence instead of communication. It's when someone keeps repeating the same behavior but blames others for their loneliness. Accountability means saying, I hurt you and I need to do better, and not, you're too sensitive. But that level of honesty requires strength, the emotional strength that many have never learned to develop. Most people were taught how to achieve, how to impress, how to win, but not how to take responsibility for the pain they cause. When emotional accountability disappears, trust dies slowly. You can't build stability with someone who refuses to see their part in the problem. Love becomes a tug-of-war instead of a partnership. One person gives, the other takes, and resentment fills the space where connection used to live. People stop feeling safe because they realize that if conflict arises, they'll be blamed instead of understood. That's when men start pulling away. That's when women stop feeling heard. Everyone starts protecting themselves and walls go up higher than ever. The hardest truth about emotional accountability is that it demands humility. It's admitting that sometimes you're the reason things went wrong. It's being willing to look in the mirror and say, I could have handled that better. That kind of self-awareness is rare, but it's also the foundation of every healthy relationship. Without it, even the strongest attraction fades, because love without accountability becomes chaos. It becomes a cycle of miscommunication, defensiveness, and disappointment. The people who sustain love aren't the ones who never argue. They're the ones who own their part and keep showing up with integrity. Many women have confused independence with emotional detachment. The modern movement toward empowerment has done something powerful. It's given women their voice, their ambition, and their freedom. But somewhere along that journey, independence began to be misunderstood. Strength turned into self-protection, and vulnerability started being seen as weakness. In trying so hard not to be dependent, many women have built walls so high that no one can truly reach them. Independence is beautiful, but when it becomes armor, it stops connection from ever forming. There's a difference between being strong and being hardened. True strength is knowing you can stand alone, but still choosing to open up. It's saying, I can take care of myself, but I also value partnership. Unfortunately, what's happening today is that many women have equated emotional openness with being too available or too soft. Society tells them that showing need makes them less powerful, but emotional detachment doesn't make you powerful, it makes you unreachable. When you numb your feelings to avoid pain, you also numb your ability to experience joy, love, and deep connection. You can't selectively shut off emotions. When you turn one off, you turn them all off. In the pursuit of self-sufficiency, emotional intimacy has started to feel like a threat instead of a gift. Many women have internalized the idea that they should never rely on anyone, that asking for emotional support means losing control. But love is not control, it's trust. It's two people who choose to be vulnerable enough to let each other in. You can't build intimacy without allowing someone to see your fears, your insecurities, your imperfect sides. The paradox is that real independence actually requires vulnerability. It takes confidence to let someone close enough to see who you really are. The detachment shows up subtly in modern dating and relationships. Conversations become transactional, affection turns into negotiation, and emotional distance gets mistaken for maturity. You hear phrases like, I don't need anyone, or I'm fine on my own, but behind that strength often lies exhaustion. The truth is, no one is meant to go through life disconnected. Human beings are wired for connection, for emotional closeness. Yet when you've been hurt or disappointed, detachment feels safer. It's easier to say, I don't care, than to admit, I'm scared of being hurt again. But every time someone hides behind that armor, they reinforce their own loneliness. What many women don't realize is that emotional detachment doesn't protect you from pain, it just delays it. It builds a quiet emptiness that grows over time. You might look strong on the outside, successful career, financial stability, independence, but emotionally, you start to feel isolated because no amount of independence can replace genuine intimacy. The relationships that truly thrive are not built on who needs who less, they're built on who is brave enough to stay open. Real love requires two strong people who can stand on their own but choose to stand together. Emotional detachment also affects how women are perceived by men. Men want to feel valued, not just tolerated. When a woman seems emotionally unavailable, a man begins to question his role in her life. He stops trying to connect because every attempt feels one-sided. This isn't about pandering or giving up independence. It's about understanding that emotional connection is not weakness. When women embrace empathy, compassion, and emotional presence, it doesn't diminish their strength. It amplifies it. The most powerful women are those who know when to lead with their hearts as much as their minds. Independence should empower you to connect more deeply, not push people away. Because in the end, love doesn't weaken you. It reminds you that strength and softness can coexist and that real power comes from being brave enough to feel. Men are withdrawing not from love, but from feeling unseen and undervalued. In a world that constantly tells men to man up, to hide emotion, to stay strong no matter what. Many have learned to silence parts of themselves just to survive. They're not walking away because they've stopped caring. They're walking away because they're tired of caring and getting nothing back. When men feel like their effort, loyalty, or emotional investment is invisible, they stop giving it. They retreat into silence, not because they want distance, but because they've learned that vulnerability only leads to criticism or rejection. For years, men have been told that strength means suppression, that real men don't cry, don't complain, and don't show weakness. But what people forget is that even the strongest person needs to feel seen. They want their effort to matter. When a man listens, protects, or provides, it's not about control, it's his way of expressing love. Yet, in many modern relationships, that love goes unnoticed or unappreciated. Society has shifted to a point where men are often expected to constantly give, but rarely receive the same emotional nurturing in return. They're told to be emotionally available, yet when they open up, they're judged for it. The double standard leaves them trapped in silence. When a man feels unseen, something inside him begins to shut down. He stops trying to explain what he needs because he's learned it won't be understood. He starts to believe that his emotions don't matter, that no one really wants to know what's happening inside him. Over time, that silence becomes a habit. It becomes easier to pull back than to keep being misunderstood. The truth is, men crave connection just as deeply as women do. They want to feel appreciated, respected, and chosen, not for what they can provide, but for who they are. Yet the modern culture of relationships often overlooks that emotional need. The narrative around masculinity has become confusing. On one side, men are encouraged to be soft and vulnerable. On the other, they're shamed for being too emotional or not man enough. This constant contradiction leaves them unsure of who they're supposed to be. When they try to show emotion, they risk being seen as weak. When they hold it in, they're accused of being distant, so they choose the safest option, distance. They disconnect to protect themselves. It's not rejection of love, it's a survival mechanism. They're not avoiding relationships, they are avoiding pain. Many men stay single not because they want to avoid women, but because they don't feel emotionally safe around them. They've experienced moments where vulnerability was met with judgment instead of understanding, where effort was taken for granted and loyalty was overlooked. Over time, that creates a deep wound, a quiet kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from betrayal, but from invisibility. When someone constantly feels unseen, they eventually stop showing up altogether. They start focusing on their own peace because that's the only place they feel valued. The tragedy is that many women mistake that withdrawal for indifference when in reality it's exhaustion. Men who feel emotionally unseen are not cold, they're guarded. They're waiting for someone who makes them feel accepted without having to perform for love. They want to be heard without being fixed, respected without having to prove themselves over and over. The truth is, when a man feels valued, he gives everything, his loyalty, his consistency, his heart. But when he feels dismissed, he takes it all back, and that's why so many men today are choosing silence over struggle, solitude over misunderstanding. Not because they don't want love, but because they're tired of giving their heart to a world that doesn't seem to notice it's there. Social media has redefined worth, turning connection into competition. What used to be about real human interaction has become a constant performance. People no longer connect to understand each other. They connect to be seen, to be validated, to be liked. Every post, every story, every filtered image has become a silent statement. Look at me. Approve of me, tell me I matter. The problem is that when worth depends on external validation, it's never enough. The more people chase attention, the emptier they feel. And when that same mindset bleeds into relationships, love becomes transactional instead of emotional. Social media has created an illusion of abundance, an endless pool of choices. You can meet someone new in seconds, flirt with strangers in minutes, and replace connection with convenience. That false sense of endless options makes people believe that commitment is optional, that there's always someone better around the corner. It's rewired the brain to value novelty over depth. Instead of investing time to build something real, people scroll for the next spark, the next validation hit, the next distraction from loneliness. The attention economy has turned relationships into a marketplace, where people measure their worth by followers, likes, and digital attention instead of authentic emotional connection. The worst part is that social media doesn't just distort how people see others, it distorts how they see themselves. Comparison has become constant. You're no longer just in a relationship with a person, you're subconsciously comparing your life to thousands of strangers online. You see couples on vacation, engagement posts, perfect morning routines, and suddenly your reality feels inadequate. What people forget is that social media is a highlight reel, not real life. Behind those polished images are the same arguments, insecurities, and disappointments that everyone faces. But because we rarely see that side, we begin to believe that love should look flawless, effortless, always exciting. That belief kills real connection because real love is messy. It takes work, patience, and forgiveness, things that don't fit into a perfect Instagram post. For men, this digital world has become especially alienating. Many feel like they're competing for attention in a space where superficial traits win over substance. They see women getting endless validation from strangers online, and it makes them hesitant to approach, to commit, to trust. They begin to believe that they can't measure up to the endless stream of digital admirers, and that belief slowly erodes confidence. For women, the pressure is just as toxic. They feel they must constantly present a perfect image, flawless skin, perfect body, ideal lifestyle to be desirable or enough. That performance is exhausting and it strips away authenticity. Both genders are stuck performing for approval rather than showing up as their real selves. Social media has also blurred the lines between reality and fantasy. Online flirtation feels harmless until it starts replacing genuine emotional connection with your partner. People begin comparing their partners to online personas, expecting unrealistic levels of beauty, attention, or perfection. Emotional cheating has become normalized, disguised as likes or innocent messages. The constant exposure to idealized versions of love has created dissatisfaction with real relationships, which are imperfect by nature. And when people start to believe that perfection exists somewhere else, they stop nurturing what's right in front of them. True connection can't survive in a world where attention is currency. Love isn't a performance, it's a presence. It requires being fully engaged with one person, not distracted by thousands of others. Until people learn to disconnect from the illusion of online validation and reconnect with authenticity, relationships will continue to suffer. Because social media teaches us to chase attention, but love requires stillness. It teaches us to seek visibility, but love grows in the unseen, and in the constant noise of likes and followers, what we've lost most is the quiet power of genuine human connection. Healing begins when both genders drop blame and choose self-awareness over ego. The truth is, relationships today are suffering not because people can't love, but because too many are focused on winning. Every disagreement becomes a power struggle. Every misunderstanding turns into a battle of who's right instead of what's real. When both men and women lead with ego, they stop listening, they stop empathizing, they stop seeing each other as allies and start seeing each other as opponents. Healing can't begin in that space. Real healing starts when both sides pause long enough to ask, "What am I bringing to this?" It starts with honesty, humility, and the courage to see your own reflection in the chaos. Blame is easy. It gives a temporary sense of relief. You tell yourself it's their fault, their flaw, their failure, and for a moment you feel justified. But blame builds walls, not bridges. It allows you to avoid accountability. When you're stuck pointing fingers, you're not growing, you're protecting your pride, and pride is one of the most dangerous poisons to any relationship. Ego makes you believe that vulnerability is weakness, that admitting fault means losing power, but in reality, self-awareness is strength. It's what separates those who repeat patterns from those who break them. Every healed relationship, every healthy partnership, begins with two people who choose to look inward before they look outward. Self-awareness means taking responsibility for the energy you bring. It's asking, am I listening to understand or just waiting to reply? It's recognizing your triggers, your fears, and how they shape the way you love. It's realizing that your past wounds influence your present behavior. Too many people carry unhealed pain into new relationships and then blame their partner for the symptoms. They think the new person will fix what the old one broke, but healing doesn't work that way. You can't expect love to heal what self-awareness refuses to confront. Until you face your own patterns, you'll keep living the same story with different people. When both men and women begin to understand their emotional wiring, empathy replaces accusation. Men start realizing that vulnerability doesn't make them weak. It makes them human. Women begin to see that compassion doesn't make them submissive. It makes them powerful. The moment we stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other as mirrors, the healing process begins. Because at the core, everyone wants the same thing: to be understood, respected, and loved for who they are. The problem is, we often demand those things without offering them first. Healing happens when we give what we seek. Letting go of ego also means learning to forgive, not just others, but yourself. Many people hold on to guilt, shame, or resentment from past relationships, carrying those emotional scars into every new interaction. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means releasing the emotional charge that keeps you stuck. When you forgive, you reclaim your power. When you let go of ego, you make space for peace, because ego feeds conflict, but humility feeds growth. The truth is, healing isn't a destination, it's a daily choice. It's waking up and deciding to be self-aware, to communicate openly, to take ownership of your emotional patterns. It's choosing to see your partner not as someone to fix, but as someone to understand. When both genders commit to that level of self-awareness, relationships stop feeling like battlefields and start becoming sanctuaries. Love becomes less about control and more about connection. That's when healing truly begins, when two people, equally flawed yet equally willing, drop their egos, face their truths, and finally learn how to meet each other where they really are.